Conditional trust in government, lessons from history. Throughout history, governments have demonstrated time and again that unchecked power leads to corruption, deception, and abuse. While a functioning society requires some level of trust in its institutions, history proves that such trust should always be conditional, never absolute. This principle is reinforced by numerous historical events, including Watergate, MKUltra, the Tuskegee experiments, and the NSA mass surveillance leaks by Edward Snowden. Each case illustrates how governments, when left unchecked, can and will exploit their power at the expense of the people they claim to serve. Watergate, the collapse of political integrity. The Watergate scandal demonstrated how political leaders could conspire to manipulate democracy for their own gain. In 1972, operatives linked to President Richard Nixon's re-election campaign were caught breaking into the Democratic National Committee headquarters at the Watergate complex. While Nixon initially denied any involvement, investigative journalism, most notably by Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein of The Washington Post, and congressional inquiries revealed a deep web of corruption, cover-ups, and illegal wiretapping. As the scandal unraveled, it became clear that Nixon and his administration had abused executive power to spy on political opponents and obstruct justice. The release of White House tapes confirmed Nixon's role in orchestrating the cover-up, ultimately leading to his resignation in 1974. Watergate proved that even the highest office in the United States was not immune to corruption, reinforcing the necessity of transparency and accountability in government. MKUltra. Government experimentation on its own citizens. While Watergate showcased political corruption, MKUltra exposed how the government could conduct unethical and illegal experiments on its own citizens. From the 1950s through the 1970s, the CIA conducted secret experiments under Project MKUltra, attempting to develop mind control techniques using drugs, hypnosis, and psychological torture. Many of these experiments were conducted without the consent of the participants, including military personnel, prisoners, and civilians. One of the most notorious aspects of MKUltra was the administration of high doses of LSD to unwitting subjects to study its effects on behavior and cognition. Some individuals suffered severe psychological damage, and in some cases deaths were reported. The full extent of the program was only uncovered in the 1970s following congressional investigations, but by then, many of the records had been deliberately destroyed by the CIA. MKUltra serves as a grim reminder that governments, under the guise of national security, are capable of violating human rights in ways that resemble dystopian fiction. The fact that such a program was carried out for decades in secret illustrates why governmental transparency and oversight are essential. The Tuskegee experiments, medical betrayal. The Tuskegee syphilis study is one of the darkest examples of government-sanctioned abuse of power. Conducted by the U.S. Public Health Service, the study tracked the progression of untreated syphilis in 600 African American men in Alabama. The men were misled, told they were receiving free health care, but in reality they were being used as test subjects to study the disease's long-term effects. Even after penicillin became the standard treatment for syphilis in the 1940s, the government deliberately withheld treatment from the participants. As a result, many of them suffered unnecessary complications, and some even died, while the disease was passed on to their families. The study only came to light in 1972 after an internal whistleblower exposed it to the press, leading to public outrage and congressional hearings. It remains a chilling example of how governments can exploit their citizens for unethical research. It eroded trust in public health institutions with effects that persist to this day. NSA mass surveillance. The rise of the surveillance state. Edward Snowden's 2013 revelations about the National Security Agency, NSA, confirmed what many had feared. The U.S. government was engaging in mass surveillance on an unprecedented scale. Snowden, a former NSA contractor, leaked classified documents showing that the agency was collecting vast amounts of data on American citizens, including phone records, emails, and internet activity, all without individual warrants. Programs such as PRISM and XKeyscore allowed the government to spy on millions of people under the justification of counterterrorism. However, these operations violated constitutional protections against unlawful searches and raised serious concerns about the erosion of privacy rights. Snowden's leaks led to global debates about surveillance, government overreach, and the balance between security and liberty. Despite assurances from government officials that these programs were necessary, the exposure of mass surveillance showed how easily the government could violate constitutional rights in the name of national security. The Snowden leaks reinforced the principle that governments should not be trusted blindly, as secrecy often masks widespread abuse. Conclusion: eternal vigilance is the price of freedom. Each of these historical cases, Watergate, MKUltra, the Tuskegee experiments, and NSA mass surveillance, demonstrates a fundamental truth. Governments, left unchecked, will abuse their power. While trust in government institutions is necessary for a stable society, that trust should always be conditional and subject to scrutiny. Transparency, accountability, and public oversight are essential safeguards against corruption and abuse. The lesson is clear. History teaches that power, when left unchecked, inevitably leads to oppression. Trust in government should never be absolute, and citizens must remain vigilant to ensure that history does not repeat itself.